to start off, I just want to talk quickly about us. And when I talk about us, from Klose Brothers, we are a group of software craftspeople that are passionate about software craftsmanship. And another key thing is we are also really interested in helping companies and other organizations really grow in their adoption of agile development methods through coaching and workshops. And so this is one of the unique things I enjoy about our company is we're not just coaches, we do code as well. It's often the case you either have a company that codes or you have a company that does coaching. But it's really actually super important that you keep your hands dirty, so to speak, in terms of actually still coding, even if you're doing coaching. And that's something that's a passion of ours. So yeah, just that was briefly about our company, but a bit about me. I originally come from South Africa. And I live in Germany now and doing, essentially Lean-Agile coaching in Germany, but originally from South Africa. And I have almost 20 years of experience in many different roles, working with startups, also having my own company, working also with, corporates. And really, one of my passions in many ways, and I talk about here current passions of strategy and scaling agile and looking at ways of measuring things. But really for me, the agile isn't something that is just specific to development teams. And when I work in an organization, I actually want to take the ideas and spread the culture through the entire organization. That's something that's really what I'm passionate about. And that's kind of led me into Lean Agile coaching, and that's really something what my day-to-day work is I'm working with, whether it's unicorns or corporates, really at transforming the organizations, helping not just teams, but also looking at how we really restructure the company and make it more agile, a little bit leaner in terms of processes, structures, and also even when it comes to organograms and flattening the hierarchy. Those are all part of what I do on a day-to-day basis. So, my talk today is about using the A3 process with OKRs. And I thought I'd start off with a review quickly. I'm not going to do a full training course on what OKRs are. I just want to review them. I think most people know what they are. But the A3 process might be something new for many people. And I want to talk about both of the processes. And then I also want to talk about how I used it in a particular case study to help the implementation of OKRs in a particular context. Okay. So that being said, OKRs are a simple measurable goal statement. I think that's clear for everyone. And just as an example, let's say I wanted to climb Table Mountain in Cape Town in South Africa. I would say, I want to climb the mountain as measured by, let's say I wanted to reach the top of a particular gorge by 2:00. Something very specific, something very measurable is one of my key results. Maybe the next thing would be to reach the top of the mountain by 4:00. And then, maybe a final key result would be something like make sure I'm down at the base of the mountain before it's dark. Something like that would be important. Okay. So I think most of us know what OKRs are in that sense. But now I'd want to talk about the A3 tool. And the A3 tool is a tool for Kaizen. Kaizen being the Japanese word for continuous improvement. I'm sure many of you have heard of that word if you've been in our agile circles. And this tool really comes from Toyota. They use this tool on the shop floor, and it's been used all the way up in management for strategic processes. And at the end of the day, it's a process that or a tool that you can use to really do the classic PDCA cycle and actually implement it. Many people talk about this, but it's another thing actually implementing it on a day-to-day basis. And the A3 tool kind of follows the following process that you would have in an improvement cutter, which is getting a sense of, okay, why do we have a problem? Why are we talking about a specific problem? Getting a sense of the direction. Where do we want to go? I know this diagram might seem strange, but I'll talk it through step by step. So that being the sense of where do we want to go, and then coming back to the start and saying, okay, well, where are we? All right. Making sure we really, not just where are we, but where are we in a measurable way? How do we actually measure where we are? Making sure we know what the current condition is there. And then jumping ahead to, okay, well, at least what's the first target step that we want to go to, okay? So we know the general direction, but let's set a goal that's measurable, that's achievable in a sense. That would be our first target condition, and then running experiments to actually get ourselves there. And in a sense, the A3 process captures this whole way of working, this whole way of doing improvements in the actual tool itself. All right. So how does it look? Yes, very boring. It's an A3 piece of paper, so to speak. That's actually where the name comes from. In Toyota, they used to do this process on an A3 piece of paper. Nowadays, when I use the process, I mean, I use whatever fits the situation. So it could be a Google Sheet. It could be Google Docs, Miro boards, whatever it is that you're wanting to use, okay? And really, it starts at the top left, which is quite straightforward, having a clear title, what's the story about, getting some background information, and then flowing through those steps, as I said, from to the bottom and then up on the right, carrying on until you end up with the retro aspect at the end. Now, I'm not going to explain the process now because I'd like to use the case study to go deeper into how it works. But essentially, that's the basic structure. Key thing is it reads like a story, okay? We don't want to just have random facts and random problems floating around. We want to have a clear sense of a story, okay? Where are we starting? Where are we going? How did this all come about? Having some context about the problem. We want to capture all of that information in the A3. And many of you probably have had some experience with design thinking. You know, it's funny, most of these ideas keep, they have a bit of a different structure, but they just keep, in a sense, reoccurring over time. And A3 has a very similar structure to the design thinking structure. So the left-hand side focuses on problem discovery and definition. The right-hand side on developing and delivering solutions to those problems. Okay. Cool. So just one of the case studies I have here, and it's not in the development context. It's actually in logistics. Worked together with the logistics planning and quality team in Germany. And they had really a situation where they were responsible for improving the quality of the processes in their entire logistics, value stream. And that was really a challenge for them in the sense that, they didn't have any authority over the people they're working with. They had to really collaborate, get people on board, and try and get everyone to work together all along the supply chain. And that was a challenge in itself. And they wanted to use OKRs to actually achieve this goal. And so what is the process I followed with them is essentially just started off. I always like to start with the big, the big vision to begin with. So start off with your classic Vimosa topics, mission, visions, and values and principles, making sure those have been defined. Some people tend to jump these first steps, but I find that when you do that, then people set goals, but these goals can be very random. Okay, so how do you validate whether these goals actually are part of the DNA of the company and are really aligned with where the company is going? So it's always important to just review those, because sometimes you find out, and I've had this with other companies, where there's been a real mismatch in the C-level between the different players in terms of what they believe is the vision and of the company. And you realize, oh my goodness, we have a real problem here. OKRs are not going to solve this. So anyway, always important to just review those. Anyway, so I went and then we really deep dive into the overall objective for the year. And these were some of the key themes that they wanted to focus on. So customer satisfaction, with their NPS score. They wanted to look at some process improvements, and also very important, transparency. One of their biggest problems is they had no real sense. They couldn't really see what was going on through this entire supply chain. So what did we do initially? Just started, to be honest, with formulating the OKRs in an Excel spreadsheet. We also built a bit of a tree structure, starting with the overall division and then going down into the teams. But initially overdid it. Okay, what tended to happen, and I had to actually pull the people back, is they actually wanted to set OKRs per person. And I was like, whoa, okay, it's not what this is for. So we had to sort that out. But quite quickly, as we started to work with the OKRs, we had some of the typical problems that you have. And, issues around alignment, so getting people to also, and the discipline of working together. We had this scenario, as I said, where you had all these different people in different divisions, in different warehouses, distribution centers. They've all got their own goals. And now suddenly it's like we say, no, we want to work on one thing and focus on that. Other challenge of discipline. You're dealing with all these managers and there's no hierarchy between them in the sense of who's in charge. And so you've got to get them to work together. It's a bit of a challenge. Also, other challenges is the usual thing. I'm sure you've had this where people, start setting goals and then they want to measure everything under the sun. And you realize they also don't have the mechanisms to do it, And so too many focus areas, of course, the politics as well. These are all some of the classic problems that we had to face. So I really needed to focus this team and this group of people. And as I said, I really needed to get them aligned and really disciplined and about how they work together. And so for me, one of the first things I did is we took all these OKRs and we actually prioritized them. And I'm sure some of you might have seen something like this, an impact versus effort matrix. And this was really helpful for prioritizing the OKRs to say, okay, well, which ones do we want to focus on first? Because there were so many areas that we could actually work on. And other key thing for me was also to, as I say, reduce those metrics. Let's focus on some key results, word being key, and not trying to measure everything under the sun. And then what I arranged was I trained the guys in this the idea of using the A3, the A3 tool, and we set up then workshops with the different groups, and to actually use the A3 to help us bring about, as I said, this focus and alignment that we needed with these teams. And so what did we do? Started off by going to the Gemba, getting key stakeholders invited to these workshops, okay? And we'd get the OKR owners to explain the background of the actual OKRs themselves, like why is this important? Why do we see this as an important goal? And moving on then, establishing what is our current state and what is the future state we want to reach. And already at this point, getting feedback from the stakeholders. Why? Because as we see here, as we go into the next phase of the A3, going into the analysis phase, going deeper, what we're doing is we're actually building alignment. Because as we're involving people, getting their feedback, getting their insights, saying, okay, well, you guys understand this part of the process or this problem. Tell us what's going on, okay? So that we can really understand the problem, okay? And not just jump from goals to solving it. We're building alignment in the sense we're getting buy-in. People are realizing they're being heard, their voices being heard. They're like, oh, we actually, people are actually interested in what we have to say. And you're starting to build that buy-in that you really need, where you don't have a clear hierarchy, and you really need to actually get people to trust you and say, wow, I actually feel involved in this process, and I can, really bring my ideas in and work with these people to solve these problems. So anyway, really understanding the problems. So many of you would know the classic Ishikawa diagram. This is also a great tool for really understanding the problem before jumping to solutions. Okay, so once we've set the goals and the current state and we understand where we want to go, we really want to take the time to make sure we A, really understand the problem, as I said, but B, making sure we're addressing the real problem. What tends to often happen is our ideas or our understanding of the things that we're trying to solve is really superficial, okay? We think we understand what's going on, but we actually don't. It's very superficial, and we need to really take the time. And what's interesting about taking the time to dig deeper into the problem space is that it actually goes completely against our nature as human beings. We are so wired to jump straight from setting goals to start doing things. We really have to hold ourselves back to actually go through this process of really trying to understand the problem and making sure that we engage in conversation and hearing. I mean, I don't know about you, but this happens to me so often. I think I know what's really a problem is or whatever's going on until I start talking to people who actually are involved in on the coal face. And then I realized, oh, okay, wait, I didn't think of that. And we really need to take the time to do that. And this is what the A3 process helps us to do, and make sure that we have a space, this analysis phase, which pushes us to do that. Okay. Cool. So other classic way, asking the 5 whys, about this, I'm sure, making sure that you really understand what's going on. And then the next thing is to gather ideas, all right, or countermeasures. So this is also important for alignment and buy-in. Getting people to tell them to provide their perspective on the problem, their insights, but now we're also getting them to share their ideas of how we could address the issues. And we make this process transparent. So we gather all these ideas in, okay? And then we actually, it's also important to transparently prioritize the ideas. So you don't say, okay, we're only going to start with this idea first because the general manager, that was his idea, But we actually really have an open and transparent way of actually prioritizing the ideas that we have. And what could that be? You could use dot voting. You could use, we were talking about weighted shorter job first. There's all sorts of different tools that you could use, RICE, whatever the case is, some sort of scoring mechanism to do that. But the important thing is that it's done transparently and it's clear for everyone. So that everyone sees, okay, this isn't being done randomly, and they're also involved in the process, of the prioritization. And so once again, we're building alignment, we're getting people on board, they feel part of the process. Okay. So having done all of this, we moved on to the planning section, and obviously when you've executed, to follow up with feedback and learnings. Now, with OKRs, you generally have a typical process where on a quarterly basis you have reviews and planning processes, and you might have in between on a monthly basis some sort of an update meeting. Something that I actually preferred to do was actually run something along the lines of a sort of an OKR A3 cycle sprint. And essentially what we would do is we'd take that A3 and we would set goals, or actually set tasks for the next 2 weeks based on the countermeasures that we had chosen, okay? And then we'd actually execute on those and have a review at the end of those 2 weeks and a mini retro to say, okay, well, this is what we did. Did it help us get closer to our OKR goals or not? Do a little retro, could we improve the way we work, etc. And then actually plan the next countermeasures to be carried out for, the following 2 weeks. And this is not necessarily something that people always do with OKRs, but this is something that I found has been helpful, because I think where things tend to break down is on the execution of OKRs. Many people, they're missing those structures to actually make it happen. And so anyway, that was really helpful for us. And just to cut a long story short, to summarize this process, what I liked about using the A3 is it just gave more meat to OKRs, which generally by themselves are, having just a goal without having a structure to actually, first of all, really understand the problem and then to execute on it. I felt there's a bit lacking in the structure itself. And so A3 really helped us to execute on those OKRs. Yes, if you want to find out more, I always like throwing books at people. So here, you're getting a book thrown at you. This is, honestly, this book is one of the most important books that I've ever read. And I refer back to it again and again. Yes, regarding A3, if you want to find out more, have a look at that. Okay. And that's it. Thank you for your time. Cool.